Okay, I'm going to start with a question. When you think of the people who are responsible for operating your organization, your community, what do you call them? Be careful. Managers or leaders? And you may say, well, what's the difference and why is it important to us in our organization? After all, they manage right now the budget process, the systems, the policies, the protocols, the procedures, and all of those good things. But I'd suggest to you also that one of their responsibilities is leading the softer side, the mission, the vision, and the people in your organization. In the Leadership Challenge, the authors tell us that the difference between managing and leading is that managing is getting people to do what you want them to do. Leading is getting them to want to do what you want them to do. It's the want to that makes the difference in leadership, according to them. John Maxwell tells us that leadership at its heart and soul is influence, very simply. And the better we can influence people and encourage their responses, then the better we can lead our organizations. We suggest that's critical and important as well. Really, it takes a balance, doesn't it, between managing and leading, knowing the difference between managing and leading in our organizations, but also knowing the difference of when to apply the principles of management versus the principles of leadership. And that's what we want to talk about today. In Enlightened Leadership, the authors suggest that you always get more of what you focus on. You always get more of what you focus on. And they used a clinical illustration where they aligned drivers up behind the wheel of a vehicle, and they continually told them, don't cross the yellow line. Don't cross the yellow line. And then they sent them down the road. Guess what happened? The drivers on the majority crossed that yellow line. And you may say, why? Because they were focused on the distracting yellow line and on the limitations and not on where they should go and the direction that they should take. And I would suggest to you that in a lot of our organizations, that may be the need, that we need to refocus off of the yellow lines and the mechanical things and more clearly onto how are we leading people and what impact. Influence is the key, and if I understand our organizations and our industry, the bottom line is really not numbers and balance sheets and budgets. It is how we influence the people in our organizations. Psychologists tell us that the average person in their lifetime will influence or impact approximately 10,000 people. Think of that. Think of the influence and the impact that all of your team leaders in your organization will have, not only in your organization, but in society. So who do they follow? Human resources studies tell us that people leave not organizations, but bosses. And people stay in organizations because their boss or their leader is encouraging, affirming, and supports them in their endeavors. So we need to remember that. So you might say, how do we change? How do we make that change? With some teams, it's a 180-degree turn. You've seen them. With others, it may be just a slight direction and not as dramatic as this, but in every case, it is refocusing where their direction and their intent is. At Greystone, we've put together a number of resources, created some, borrowed some, but pulled together a number of resources that provide leadership development guides, coaches' corners, webinars, training materials, and all kinds of things that are available to move this effort forward. We've also taken a lot of time, and over the past better than 2 years in developing all of this and then sitting down with teams and getting feedback and doing implementation. We're now launching it with about 200 team members across the United States. We call our program The Road to the Future for good reason, because we firmly believe that the future of senior living rests in the leadership and how we craft and create and enhance that leadership within our communities and our organizations more solidly than on the mechanical pieces. And we developed it around leadership competencies, one of which is, for example, trust. In an organization, we need leaders who imbue that type of atmosphere where people can trust what they say, they do what they say, they honor it, they hold the confidentiality of the organization in best regard. Motivation and growing others is another competency that we look at, and that is the leaders who will say, what's not important is my agenda, what's important is your growth, your development, and how are we going to make sure that you get where you need to go as a leader in this organization. Another example, customer service. Not only being sensitive to what our customers need, but even going that extra mile and anticipating what they want and making sure that we have a culture of leadership that fulfills those things in our operations and our leadership. We also have a computer-based program that allows our leaders to get online and take a self-assessment, a supervisory assessment, 360-degree review, and then measure those goals as they move along in their leadership journey so that they're tracking and they're measuring their progress. So I would ask you, for your organization, do you want them to distinguish themselves as managers, or do you want to distinguish them as leaders? And if you're interested in that latter category, contact us at greystonecommunities.com or come see us at booth 1607 under the Greystone flag. Thank you very much.